Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this certain expectation of like mechanical precision.
Right, like an X-ray or something.
Exactly. You break your arm, an X-ray shows this jagged white line. The doctor points right at it, and you get a cast. It's binary. It's clean.
Yeah, totally clear cut.
But stepping into the world of women's health specifically, the changes the body goes through during perimenopause and menopause, that X-ray machine suddenly becomes completely useless.
Oh, absolutely. It's a totally different landscape.
And it's a landscape historically shrouded in, well, complete silence. But right now we are seeing an absolute explosion of new technologies and treatments. Which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive.
Yes, the core question we're looking at today.
Right. We are looking at a stack of clinical guidelines, medical studies, and specialized clinic protocols to answer a highly specific but incredibly common question for you, the listener.
And it's a question that sits right at the intersection of, fundamental human biology and high-tech medical devices.
Yep. The core issue is this. If you are considering a vaginal tightening procedure using energy-based devices like lasers or radio frequency, does starting with hormone replacement therapy, specifically local estrogen, actually improve the tissue support and give you better results?
That's the big debate, yeah.
To help visualize what we're talking about today, I want you to picture the vaginal wall like a beautiful old house.
I like that analogy.
Thanks. So over decades, the foundation of this house has gotten dry. It's, starting to crumble. And because the foundation is compromised, the walls themselves are beginning to sag.
Makes sense.
So you can hire a contractor to come in with high-tech tools to tighten up those walls. And in our scenario, that contractor is the laser. But the real dilemma is, shouldn't you repair the crumbly foundation first before you let a contractor start tearing into the drywall?
You absolutely have to repair the foundation. I mean, in the medical literature, that foundational decay is referred to as genitourinary syndrome of menopause, or GSM.
GSM, right?
Yeah, and it is a massive structural and chemical shift. It affects up to 80% of menopausal women.
80%. Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. But before we can even evaluate the lasers or the hormone therapy, we really have to look closely at the cellular drought that causes that foundation to crumble in the first place.
Because the tissue doesn't just become lax overnight, right?
Right, exactly. The sources detail this massive cascade failure, and it all starts with the drop in estrogen.
Okay, let's unpack this. What happens when it drops?
Well, in a healthy premenopausal state, the surface lining, so the vaginal epithelium, is thick. It's robust.
Yeah.
And it's full of these deep folds called rugae that allow for expansion.
Like an accordion, kind of.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a brilliant biological mechanism at play here. The superficial cells of that lining are constantly shedding. And as they fall away, they release large amounts of a stored sugar called glycogen.
So they're shedding and releasing sugar. What's the point of that?
That glycogen serves a single crucial purpose. It is the sole food source for the beneficial bacteria in the vaginal microbiome.
Oh, okay.
Primarily the lactobacilli. So lactobacilli consume the glycogen, and they produce lactic acid as a byproduct.
Which is good, right?
It's essential. That acid keeps the vaginal pH safely below 4.5. It basically creates an invisible acidic shield against infections.
Wait, so when systemic estrogen levels plummet during menopause, does that entire microscopic ecosystem just starve?
Exactly. Without estrogen, the food disappears.
Yeah.
The epithelium thins out dramatically, and those plump, glycogen-rich superficial cells drop to less than 10% of the tissue.
Jeez, less than 10%.
Yeah, so the glycogen plummets, lactobacilli starve and die off, and without them producing lactic acid, the pH of the environment rises above 5.
It becomes alkaline.
Right, significantly more alkaline.
Yeah.
And suddenly, bacteria that have no business dominating the environment, like E. coli, take over the area.
Oh, wow. So that's why urinary tract infections are such an issue.
Exactly. This chemical shift is why women with GSM experience burning, persistent irritation, and a highly increased rate of UTIs. The chemical shield is simply gone.
Okay, so that covers the surface level symptoms, the dryness and irritation that usually bring women into the clinic in the first place. But what about the feeling of laxity? The physical looseness that drives the demand for tightening procedures? That stems from something deeper, right?
Yeah, we're talking about the structural scaffolding underneath that surface lining.
The actual beams of the house.
Precisely. We have to look below the epithelium into what's called a lamina propria. This is where the connective tissue lives, the collagen and elastin fibers that provide strength and elasticity.
And how are those affected?
Well, those fibers are manufactured by cells called fibroblasts. You can think of fibroblasts as little cellular factories that pump out mortar and beams for the house.
Okay, I'm with you.
The catch is that these factories run exclusively on estrogen. When systemic estrogen falls, the active fibroblasts literally go into hibernation.
They just shut down.
Completely. They shrink down, become inactive cells known as fibrocytes, and shut down production entirely.
So with the factories shut down, no new collagen is being made.
Right. And the old existing collagen begins to degrade.
The sources described a process called hyalinization.
Yeah, hyalinization is where the collagen fibers fuse together into these stiff, glassy clumps instead of maintaining a flexible, woven network.
That sounds awful.
It is. And on top of that, the elastin fibers just fragment and snap.
So you're left with a thinned out surface that's prone to tearing, a hostile alkaline microbiome, and a collapsed, glassy structural scaffolding underneath.
That is the biological reality of severe genitourinary syndrome of menopause.
Right. And because the scaffolding has completely collapsed, you can't just slap a mechanical fix on it. You have to prep the canvas first, which is why the clinical guidelines point to hormone replacement therapy to fix the foundation.
Exactly.
But, a major distinction in all these medical studies is the heavy emphasis on local vaginal estrogen over systemic HRT pills for these specific symptoms. Why is local delivery so much more effective here?
The preference for local delivery comes down to receptor density. The vagina, the vestibule, and the bladder trigone are densely packed with estrogen receptors, specifically ER-alpha receptors.
Got it.
So when someone takes a systemic HRT pill or, uses a patch, that estrogen has to circulate through the entire bloodstream, diluting its impact on any one specific area.
It's the difference between watering the roots of a specific dying plant versus just turning on a humidifier in the living room and hoping the plant absorbs some moisture.
That's a perfect way to put it. Applying a low-dose topical estrogen, like an estriol cream, a localized ring, or a tiny vaginal tablet, delivers the hormone rapidly and directly to those hungry receptors.
And it forces a remarkable reversal of that cellular drought.
It really does. The local estrogen thickens the epithelium again, it restarts the shedding process, the glycogen returns, the lactobacilli feed and multiply.
The pH drops back down.
Yes, to a safe level, and localized blood flow is restored.
And a major clinical advantage here is that systemic absorption into the rest of the body remains minimal, right?
Very minimal. The guidelines highlight that because the dose of these localized creams is so low, patients often don't even need to take an opposing progestogen to protect the uterine lining, which is, a standard requirement with systemic HRT.
Now, the sources also brought up a fascinating alternative to standard local estrogen that operates on a completely different biological pathway.
Ah, yes, prasterone.
Right, prasterone, which is a daily vaginal DHEA insert. The mechanism behind this is wild because the tissue basically does its own chemistry.
It's incredible. It's a mechanism called endocrinology. DHEA is a precursor hormone. It acts as the raw material.
Okay.
When DHEA is introduced locally into the vaginal tissue, the epithelial cells absorb it and use their own internal enzymes to convert that DHEA into both estrogen and testosterone right inside the cell.
Wait, estrogen and testosterone?
Yep, both.
The localized production of testosterone seems to be the critical difference there, because estrogen plumps the surface lining, but the androgens, the testosterone, have a profound influence on the deeper structural changes, don't they?
They do. The testosterone actively stimulates the underlying smooth muscle and increases the collagen density in the lamina propria.
That's amazing.
And furthermore, 95% of those newly minted active hormones are inactivated right at the site of synthesis.
So they don't leak out.
Exactly. They do their heavy lifting in the vaginal wall and then disappear without raising hormone levels in the systemic bloodstream.
So if local estrogen and DHEA are so highly effective at rebuilding the mucosa, dropping the pH, and waking up those dormant fibrocyte factories, we have to look at the limitation here.
Right.
Why are patients in clinics bringing lasers into the equation at all?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, hormones are fantastic for rebuilding the mucosal surface, the paint and drywall of our house analogy.
Right.
They restore lubrication and stop painful microtears. But for many women, hormones alone lack the intense physical restructuring power needed to fix severe physical laxity.
Okay.
If the deep hyalinized collagen network has been stretched out, perhaps from, a combination of childbirth and the estrogen drop of menopause, biochemical signals alone might not be enough to weave that deep tissue back into a tight, resilient structure.
Which opens the door for the energy-based devices. If estrogen is the water and fertilizer that brings the dormant garden back to life, these devices are the aggressive pruning shears.
Good analogy.
They step in to force the vines to grow back thicker, tighter, and stronger.
Exactly. The primary mechanism for all these devices is controlled trauma. They intentionally create a thermal spark deep in the tissue to force a massive wound healing response.
And the medical literature highlights a few different ways to deliver that thermal spark.
Yeah, mainly three.
Fractional CO2 lasers are heavily featured, right? And they are classified as microablative.
Yes, meaning they literally vaporize tissue. The laser punches microscopic holes into the vaginal wall by targeting water molecules.
Okay, so it boils the water inside the cells.
Essentially, yes. The energy heats the water instantly, vaporizing the cell and creating a tiny column of injury. The body senses this controlled trauma and rushes blood, growth factors, and active fibroblasts to the area to heal the microwounds.
Triggering neocollagenesis.
Right, the creation of brand new collagen.
And then other clinics utilize erbium YE lasers, which operate at a different wavelength and are non-ablative.
Right, so instead of vaporizing the tissue and punching holes, they provide smooth, homogeneous heating deeper into the lamina propria.
They don't break the surface.
Exactly. They heat the underlying collagen just enough to make it instantly contract and thicken without breaking the surface epithelium.
And then you have radiofrequency devices like the Infemi 360, which bypass light entirely. They use high-frequency electromagnetic currents to create ionic agitation.
Ionic agitation, yeah.
The device rapidly vibrates the molecules deep in the tissue, creating resistance, and that resistance generates deep volumetric heat.
Right, causing the existing collagen to immediately contract while stimulating long-term new growth.
And across all three technologies, the procedures are shockingly fast. Clinic guides show they take maybe 5 to 8 minutes. They're done in office without anesthesia. And patients typically just report like a warm sensation during the treatment.
It's very quick.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to push back a bit.
Okay, go for it.
You just said the CO2 laser specifically targets water to create that thermal injury and vaporize the tissue.
I did.
But we just spent the last 10 minutes establishing that a menopausal vagina suffering from GSM is a cellular desert. The tissue is paper thin and severely dehydrated. How are you supposed to safely fire a laser at water that simply isn't there?
Huh. That contradiction is the exact crux of the issue, and it explains why the clinical guidelines strongly advocate for combination therapy.
Because you can't laser a desert.
You cannot safely and effectively laser completely dry atrophic tissue. If the tissue is devoid of moisture, the laser energy behaves unpredictably.
It just scatters.
Basically. Without water to properly absorb and control the heat, the thermal damage can penetrate too deeply. This risks scarring, severe pain, and prolonged healing times.
Not to mention, if the cellular factories, the fibroblasts, are still dormant and shrunk down into fibrocytes because of the estrogen drop, they can't even respond to the trauma.
Exactly.
You are demanding emergency structural repair from a construction crew that has been starved and is currently asleep.
The foundation must come first. Providing local estrogen, or systemic HRT, before introducing a laser restores the cellular hydration. It plumps up the mucosal cells with water, giving the laser its necessary target.
It gives it something to hit.
Right. And more importantly, it wakes up the fibroblasts. So when the laser finally provides the thermal spark, the cells are awake, active, and fully capable of manufacturing new collagen.
And we have substantial real-world data confirming this synergy. The Gaspar study is a perfect illustration.
Oh, the Gaspar study is fascinating.
Researchers looked at a group of women undergoing erbium YAG laser treatments and split them up. One group pre-treated their tissue with an estriol cream for 2 weeks prior to the laser sessions, while others just used the cream alone or just received the laser alone.
And the results from the combination group were striking.
How so?
The women who primed their tissue with estrogen for 2 weeks before the laser intervention showed significantly greater measurable relief of their GSM symptoms compared to the other groups.
And it wasn't just a deeper improvement, it was a much longer-lasting one, right?
Much longer. The estrogen-primed laser group experienced sustained improvements for up to 18 months post-treatment.
18 months. That's huge.
It is. The groups relying on just the laser or just the cream saw their symptoms returning much sooner.
And there was another specialized study combining CO2 lasers with estriol that demonstrated massive, statistically significant improvements in the overall vaginal health index when the two modalities were combined.
Biologically, the synergy is flawless. The estrogen therapy provides the structural raw materials, the hydration, the active fibroblasts, and the thickened epithelium. The energy device then provides the aggressive thermal catalyst needed to force those raw materials to weave themselves into a tight, elastic matrix.
And the clinic protocols reflect the science in very practical terms. Guidelines from specialized practices, like the Women's Health Clinic, explicitly advise patients who are undergoing a laser or radio frequency course to continue their local estrogen schedule before, during, and after the device sessions.
Yeah, pausing the hormones would immediately start to undo the foundational prep work.
They also recommend applying a fingertip of the estrogen cream directly to the most sensitive areas, like the vestibule at the entrance, right around the time of the treatment course.
Right, to build up the epithelial resilience.
Which makes total sense because just the insertion of the laser probe itself could cause micro tears if the tissue is highly atrophic.
Absolutely.
Pre-treating with estrogen ensures the mucosa is thick enough to handle the actual mechanical friction of the procedure without sustaining unnecessary trauma.
So, if you were actually looking at booking one of these procedures,
Yeah.
what does this mean for your timeline?
Right, that's the big question for the listener.
Energy-based devices are undeniably powerful tools for amplifying the healing capacity of tissue and reversing laxity. But they are amplifiers. If the tissue has zero healing capacity due to a severe estrogen deficiency, you are essentially demanding a physical impossibility from your body.
So for the safest and most long-lasting results, the clinical consensus really requires a 1-2 punch.
Exactly.
Reversing the cellular drought has to happen first. Laying down a foundation of hormonal health, whether that is through localized estrogen creams, estradiol rings, or the unique endocrinology of DHEA, gives your body the biological building blocks it needs. You repair the foundation of the house, and then you bring in the contractor to tighten up the walls.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, there is one final fascinating thread hidden in the research that completely reframes this entire process.
Oh.
Yeah. Throughout this discussion, we have focused almost entirely on structural mechanics, collagen networks, smooth muscle fibers, lactobacilli, and cellular hydration.
The physical stuff.
Right. But the sources reveal that estrogen drop also directly influences vaginal innervation. We are talking about the actual nerve density within the tissue.
Ah, the electrical wiring of the house.
Precisely. When estrogen drops during menopause, you might assume everything in the tissue decreases or shrinks.
That's what I would assume, yeah.
But research shows that the sensory and sympathetic nerve density in the vaginal tissue actually increases.
Wait, really? It goes up?
It goes up. This hyperproliferation of nerves leads to a condition called hyperalgesia, which is a significantly heightened sensitivity to pain.
So the tissue is not merely thin, dry, and prone to tearing. The actual nerves within that tissue are actively hypersensitive, amplifying the pain of any physical friction, whether that is from daily life or a medical procedure.
Exactly. And by applying local estrogen before a procedure, you are accomplishing far more than just hydrating the cells. Studies indicate that local estrogen actually normalizes that nerve density.
It calms the nerves down.
It reduces the excessive growth of those pain-sensing nerves. So as you consider the mechanical and structural tightening of this tissue, consider the neurological impact as well. The ultimate goal of rejuvenation isn't simply restoring a collagen matrix. It is utilizing hormones to fundamentally rewire and calm the nervous system of the pelvic floor.
So you aren't just patching a crumbling foundation or forcefully tightening up the sagging walls. You are going into the framework and fixing the faulty, sparking electrical system before it burns the house down.
That's exactly it.
It perfectly highlights how beautifully complex this localized system is and why a single tool approach is rarely enough. You need the raw biological materials, the precise structural spark, and the correct electrical wiring to make the house whole again.